Welcome to the 5th year of Compliance 1010. Past 4 years, we've been having the Compliance 1010 award ceremony and a full-day symposium, and this is the 5th year. The Compliance 1010 Awards is held on the 10th of October every year. So you can see 1010 every year, same date, so that a 10 on 10 on compliance. Let me invite our new CEO, Jaideep Kevalramani, JD as we call him, the dashing and dynamic person to take over. So please share the welcome address, after which Suhas will say a few words.
This is our 5th year, and essentially, we don't see this as an event anymore. We see this as a celebration of compliance. You are all professionals who are associated with the compliance domain, and we see this as an opportunity to bring you all together so that we allow you to network and collaborate. We've got a great day lined up ahead, including some great panels on POSH, anti-corruption, anti-bribery, and digital. And towards the evening, we've got our award session. This year, the awards evening is going to be even more special. We've got a great lineup. Thank you, and have a nice day.
Thanks for supporting compliance, ethics, and governance. When we started this journey about 5 years ago, we never thought that people would come forward for something as mundane as compliances to kind of celebrate. Very clearly, the environmental challenges have forced us to move towards a paradigm which is kind of taking us to setting up some benchmarks across various aspects of compliances. Of course, the broad theme that we have undertaken today for the afternoon seminar session is actually no tolerance. No tolerance to the sexual harassment at workplace, no tolerance to bribery and corruption, and no tolerance to non-compliance. I thank all of you once again for being here, for supporting compliance, and for supporting ethics. Thank you very much.
The first panel discussion in the afternoon was on the topic No Tolerance to Sexual Harassment, Developing Safe Workplaces in India, moderated by Anita Shantaram. Here are the highlights from the panel.
So one of my thinking is about that there are sometimes false accusations, or frivolous complaints. So do false accusations or misinterpreted meaning of harassment dilute the larger, more problematic cases of sexual harassment reports? So what can we do to prevent that or reduce that?
I do firmly believe that a dialogue has to start, and it started, hopefully now. And I also believe that there has to be an element of responsibility both for the aggrieved person as well as the accused. And that responsibility is to speak up, but also to know what could be a misinterpretation, and do I really want to make a big deal out of it without really understanding what the intention of the other person was. So I think there has to be a responsibility on both sides, and as organizations, we have to take ownership of making people aware of all these aspects, not just to women. Sometimes we do POSH sessions and only women show up. And we're like, no, bring the men in the room. They need to know about POSH more than the women do. And, or if not more, at least equally, and take responsibility of their actions, but also take responsibility to speak up.
The core issue is we have, as humanity, said this is not on. No tolerance for this. God help the person who does this again. For that reason, if men are scared, to your first question, so be it. I am telling you, men are not scared because not all of us are animals. Create that guideline so that people feel protected. This is not about culture providing us, or this is not like terrorism or a health hazard anywhere. This is about core value education into each one of us.
No tolerance to corruption, the ABCs of anti-bribery and anti-corruption recent amendments to Prevention of Corruption Act was the topic of the second panel discussion moderated by Ramesh Sharma. Here are some of the highlights of the panel.
In the Prevention of Corruption Act 1988 and the current amendment, there has been very clever and very astute changes brought in by the bureaucrats, by which government officials are now completely excluded in the context that you cannot start investigations against a government official unless you have taken the permission from the appointing or dismissing authority. However, on the other side, Section 8 and 9, the giver has become a criminal offense. Not only the individuals, but also the organizations. Now, this is very serious, and most of the managing directors and chief executives are not even aware of these amendments that have taken place. This is serious because, given the level of corruption in the country, as of now, there is no protection. Because the Act is quite open, they only mentioned that adequate measures have to be prescribed. Let us, from the corporate side, lead this fight against corruption. Because by criminalizing corruption from the giver, you now have a very strong point moment any demand comes to you. Every professional in an organization must now stand up. And if the organization or the managing director or the owner or the capital asks a professional to indulge in any such acts, he can bring up this particular act and say that it is not possible, I will not be part of it. And if you are able to do that, we will start the process of fighting corruption, reducing corruption, and by this way, this will be a unique proposition to strengthen the Indian economy. For us, one of the major factors by which I think we can get ahead of China.
I would now turn myself to Mr. Tulsapurkar Suhas. What do you think, according to you, with your experience in the compliance zone, how the private sector should be preparing itself for this kind of an act?
I think that this enactment that has been brought in is probably not fulfilling all the treaty obligations that India as kind of a nation or the state undertook with the United Nations Treaty. And to that effect, it falls very short of the international expectations on India on the corruption. While on the different hand from the corporate sector, if we are saying that we need to have adequate measures in place, which will mean anti-bribery, anti-corruption compliance, policies, statements, all the 10 hallmarks of compliance program got to be brought in there, but that's not going to be enough. And surely there are provisions which are lopsided, one-sided, and that's why probably, the amendment is probably too late. It's also too little, because I don't think it'll curb corruption.
The third panel discussion on the topic No Tolerance to Non-Compliance in the Digital Era was moderated by Jaideep Keval Ramani. Here are some snippets of the discussion.
How should the business manage data? Your thoughts on that?
I work for a company that's about 150 years old, and we have so much data, physical data all over. I felt the first step was digitize old legacy documents. And the other step we felt was make them text searchable. So you mentioned AI. So one component of AI is natural learning processes, or what they call OCR. I think is optical cognitive recognition. So make every document searchable. We've taken a license, I'm working on a license for a tool called Relativity, or we develop the product in-house to make sure everything is searchable and documents are automatically sorted and classified. Response would be better litigation preparedness, better data preparedness, and take licenses for excellent search engines internally that will automatically store and sort.
There is today a grave need to actually discard, because of data obesity, a lot of the data which is dysfunctional, not usable. And it becomes important to apply, again, AI to that aspect as to what is the data that I already have which requires to be junked and thrown out of my system. Secondly, the biggest problem in large emerging databases like ROC, like police records, for example, MCA websites, court, we have not templatized the way in which every field should be filled up. We've also not sensitized people to the fact that SRI and SHRI are not interchangeable expressions. You know, and what this does is it creates such a lot of bad data. And when it is picked up, then you got to analyze it, you got to scan it, you need to make sure that it's not talking about two different things. You need to find out that it is talking about the same thing. All of this creates the large overhead that we are today paying. So there is huge room for all of this to improve. So all of these corrections need to be made. Templatization, harmonization, simplification, elimination, and actually making sure that you have only data which you truly need and which you need to work with.
The Compliance 1010 Awards held in the evening started with a special address by the former SEBI chairman, M. Damodaran.
I'm delighted to be here, and I think it's a phenomenal effort that Legasis is making to promote the culture of compliance. With that said, let me also add that compliance is non-negotiable. Compliance by choice is apparently the theme, not just of today's function, but perhaps of all of what you do. I am told several hundred of you who applied for this, that 700 people applied for compliance awards is more heartwarming than the fact that India scored 600 plus runs in the cricket match after a long time. Yes. That means 700 people actually looked into the mirror and told themselves, I have made the cut. So let me see whether the jury thinks that I have made the cut. Great start. It doesn't matter that many of you missed out. Maybe next time you will be here, and maybe next time you will get awards. It doesn't matter. The fact that you, in your mind, qualified as someone that measured up is, I think, a bigger tribute than any award that you can get anywhere. If it's 700, let there be 7,000 people who have the courage to look into the mirror next time and tell the guy that they see on the other side of the mirror, the reflection, look into that person's eyes and say that, okay, I've also measured up, I need to apply. When that number increases, that will be the day that awards will become even more meritorious than they are now, that awards will have even more meaning, but more importantly, corporate India would have stood up and delivered value to all stakeholders. I hope it happens in my lifetime, but if the direction is right, as I believe it is, if the pace is right, as I believe it should be, maybe you'll get there sooner rather than later. God bless.
Next was a keynote address by BSE Managing Director and Chief Executive Officer Ashish Chauhan on corporate governance and compliance.
And why do we require the compliances and corporate governance? Many times we think we can actually skip it. But for me, the modern capitalism would not survive if we did not have corporate governance. And compliance is a very essential part, but not the only part of corporate governance. How does the corporate governance differ from compliance? Compliance, for me, is absolutely important. It's the hygiene part. It's the forms and formats and processes and everything else. You might be doing good corporate governance, but if you are not compliant, you may still fail somewhere. And that's where, for me, the compliance is absolutely the must part, without which you are not having good corporate governance.
There was also a panel discussion on corporate governance that featured retired Supreme Court Judge B.N. Sri Krishna, former SEBI Chairman M. Damodaran as a part of the panel. Here are some excerpts of the discussion.
As a compliance professional, on the corporate governance, what is that we need to do?
What is required is the heart within to do the right thing to all persons at all times. My friend Damodaran here said, right thing at the right time. I would add one thing and say at all times. Now if that is there, then the rest of it is how do you do it? What are the parameters within which you are bound? Finally, despite all this, is it for the benefit of the company that you are running, or is it for your own benefit? Does it really benefit the company? That is the third question that needs to be argued. Now, in our country, take every one of the cases that you mentioned, whether it is Satyam or ILFS or the famous case where people have gone away to Antigua or London or wherever. What is it that is really caused the problem? The problem is the human failure. Now, if the human failure is there, no amount of corporate governance, no amount of even building parameters built around him, no amount of compliance will really come to rescue. So, improve yourself from inside, then talk of compliance, then talk of corporate governance. Otherwise, all three will fail simultaneously. That is my take on the whole issue.
So as a compliance professional, if I stand by in the company today to say that I have gumption enough to move out of the job, because portability or moving out of the job is one of the best solutions if your organization is doing something which you don't like or which is not right. Wherever you go, you're probably finding similar problems. That's a bit of a predicament, sir.
What should compliance officers do? If you believe in something strongly and you believe that above you in the hierarchy, people might not support that, write it out in detail as if it's your defense case. For reasons to be recorded in writing. If for reasons to be recorded in writing, you arrive at a conclusion and sign off, somebody will overrule you. He can't kill you, he can't hang you. He may transfer you. Transfer is not punishment. There must be risks that you take, provided you understand the nature of the risk, the dimensions of the risk, what is the risk mitigation that's available, what mid-course corrections you need to make. If you do that, stand up and be counted. It is because we fear. What happens if I do this? Don't fear. We fear too much.
Absolutely.
Take the risks. Let us see what will happen. Nothing will happen.
The night ended with the Compliance 1010 Awards ceremony, where compliance professionals and business leaders were recognized and honored for their exemplary contribution in fostering a culture of compliance and ethics not only in their respective organizations but also across the industry. Here are the final awards that were given out.
Ladies and gentlemen, these are the 3 top awards. The first one being Exemplary Contribution to Compliance Ecosystem. Ladies and gentlemen, put your hands together for Tejpal Patil, General Counsel of GE India. Next award, Ethical Business Enterprise Award. Put your hands together for Mr. Basis Tarapur for Tata Trust. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, the Compliance Crusader Award, as he announced, is Mr. Deepak Parekh. I'd like to request Mr. Conrad D'Souza, Mr. Ajay Agarwal, and Mr. Sudhir Jha from HDFC to please come on stage and receive the award on his behalf. Round of applause for HDFC Limited. This is the final award, ladies and gentlemen. A huge round of applause. Compliance Crusader Award for Compliance 1010 this year